Welcome to Midnight Tales, a place where the forgotten chapters of history are brought back to life in the stillness of night. Tonight, dear listener, we journey into another shadowed story, a tale whispered by time and wrapped in darkness. Prepare yourself for the legend of the forgotten plague ship of Bristol. They say, the sea remembers what men forget. In the year 1665, when plague gripped London's alleys and silenced its bells, a ship left the Thames under a shroud of secrecy. Her name was the Providence, a merchant vessel by record, but by rumor, a floating tomb. Witnesses swore they saw coffins loaded by moonlight, priests whispering prayers they dared not speak aloud, and sailors whose faces were pale as wax. The ship sailed west, bound, it was said, for Bristol. But Providence never arrived. Weeks later, fishermen along the Severn estuary reported a black silhouette drifting through the fog. No lantern, no flag, only the creak of timbers and the smell of rot upon the tide. When a boarding party climbed her rails, they found no crew. The decks were slick with salt and blood, the cargo hold stacked not with grain, but with corpses. Yet these were not the still dead. Their jaws moved, teeth grinding in endless hunger. Their fingers clawed the air, though no breath filled their lungs. The sailors fled in terror, but one remained behind long enough to glimpse the captain's cabin. There upon the desk lay a journal. Its last words read, "We set sail not to escape the plague, but to deliver it. Bristol must burn, for London to survive." Word of Providence spread like fire. The mayor of Bristol ordered the harbor sealed, and no ship allowed near her cursed hull. But hunger breeds defiance. Smugglers rode under cover of night, climbing her rotting decks for plunder. None returned. Villagers swore they heard screams at midnight, carried across the tide. Some claimed to see figures pacing the deck, not sailors, but plague victims wrapped in funeral linen. A month passed. Providence still drifted, anchored by chains unseen. The tide carried her out, then back again, as though the sea itself would not let her go. And always, the smell of rot upon the wind. By winter, the ship had become a legend. Children dared each other to look for her lantern. Sailors muttered that Providence carried not plague alone, but a covenant broken. One friar, Brother Matthew, swore he could end it. Armed with crucifix and scripture, he rode out alone. Onlookers saw him vanish into fog, and heard chanting roll across the tide. At dawn, his boat returned, empty. The journal was found upon the thwart, open to a page stained in black. It read, "The sea will keep what the land cannot bury." In time, Providence was gone. Some said storms dragged her beneath the waves. Others whispered she still drifted, waiting for a harbor foolish enough to welcome her. Yet even now, fishermen along the Bristol Channel speak of nights when fog smothers the tide, and a shadow ship glides by without sound. They swear the air thickens with the stench of death, and the toll of phantom bells echoes across the water. Some say if you listen close, you can hear a crew still groaning, jaws grinding in endless hunger. Others claim to see a captain's figure at the stern, his hand upon a journal that never closes. And so the tale of Providence lingers, not written in ink or scripture, but in waves and whispers. A reminder that the sea does not forgive, and that some ships sail forever. And so, our midnight tale comes to an end. But remember, the shadows never sleep, and another story always waits. If tonight's journey stirred your imagination, leave a comment, share your thoughts, and let the echoes of your voice join the legend. Do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel, so you never miss the next tale whispered in the dark. Until then, rest well, and beware the silence between the bells. The next story is titled, The Bell Tower of Black Hollow. They say, when a bell tolls with no hand to strike it, a soul is being claimed. In the year 1741, the villagers of Black Hollow awoke to such a sound. The old church tower, abandoned for nearly a century, was ringing. Its bell had been cast in iron so dark that priests once whispered it was forged not with fire, but with blood. The last time it had tolled was the night the plague swept through the valley, and half the village was buried in shallow earth. But on this winter morning, the villagers swore no man stood in the tower. The ropes were cut, the stairs collapsed, and yet the bell rang on. Children cried that they saw a figure in the belfry, tall, draped in rags, its face hidden by the swinging iron. And each toll shook the earth, as though the graveyard itself was answering. The priest of Black Hollow ordered the tower sealed. But that night, the ringing returned. Louder, slower, deeper. And with each toll, another villager vanished. The priest, Father Anselm, began to keep a journal. He wrote that the bell did not toll at random. It tolled in threes. Then silence. Then again in threes. A rhythm like a prayer. Or a curse. On the third night, a child named Miriam was gone. Her bed empty, her window unbroken. Her footprints leading only toward the churchyard. Father Anselm dared to enter the tower. He found no ropes, no gears. Only the bell, swaying gently, as though pushed by invisible hands. Upon its rim were carvings no villager had seen before. Not Latin, not scripture. Symbols twisting like serpents biting their own tails. That night, he wrote, "The bell is no instrument of God. It tolls for its master. And its master is not merciful." Fear turned the village against itself. Some begged to flee, others swore leaving would only carry the curse beyond Black Hollow. So they chose destruction. Men carried axes and hammers, and marched to tear down the tower. At sunset, the bell tolled once more. The men struck the stones, cursing each swing. But each strike only echoed louder, as though the tower itself mocked them. Then came a sound no man could forget. Not the toll of iron, but the scream of a human throat. One of the men fell. His chest caved inward as if struck by the bell, though it had not moved. Panic broke the crowd. Axes fell, hammers dropped, and the men fled, leaving the tower untouched. Father Anselm recorded only one line that night: "The bell does not guard the tower. The tower guards the bell." By spring, Black Hollow was silent. No smoke rose from chimneys. No children played by the stream. Travelers found doors swinging open, tables set with uneaten bread, and no living soul within. The only sound was the bell, tolling slow, endless, and patient. Generations later, the valley was overgrown. The church tower still stood, its stones blackened, its windows hollow. And when storms rolled over the hills, travelers swore they heard it. A bell tolling through the thunder, calling not the faithful, but the forgotten. And so the legend endures. The bell tower of Black Hollow, a monument not of faith, but of famine, plague, and silence. They say if you stand beneath it at midnight, and the bell tolls for you, your name will never be written again. And so, our midnight tale comes to an end. But remember, the shadows never sleep, and another story always waits. If tonight's journey stirred your imagination, leave a comment, share your thoughts, and let the echoes of your voice join the legend. Do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel, so you never miss the next tale whispered in the dark. Until then, rest well, and beware the silence between the bells. The next story is titled, The Silent Monastery of Saint Icarus. They say, silence is the language of God. But in Saint Icarus, silence was a curse. High in the Carpathian mountains, there once stood a monastery known for its bells. 7 towers, 7 bronze tongues, whose chimes rolled across the valleys like thunder. The monks of Saint Icarus were said to keep the hours of heaven. At dawn they rang for prayer, at dusk for confession, and at midnight for the souls of the dead. But one winter in 1538, the bells stopped. Travelers who reached the monastery gates found the cloister empty, the doors unlocked, candles still burning in the chapel, bread still warm upon the tables. Not a single monk remained, and the bells hung silent, as though the very air had been cut away. The chronicles speak of a letter, penned by Brother Lucian, the monastery's archivist. He wrote of voices in the cloister, voices that did not belong to the brethren. He claimed the bells rang by themselves, at first only once, faintly, but soon in long dreadful peals, as though announcing a mass no monk had called. When they climbed the towers, they found the ropes cut, the beams rotten, yet the clappers swung. Brother Lucian wrote, "We no longer keep the hours of heaven. The bells keep hours of their own." By the third night, monks began to vanish. First the novices, then the elders. Their cells left undisturbed, except for one thing: a smear of ash upon the floor. The abbot, desperate, ordered the bells destroyed. Axes and hammers rang against bronze, but each blow only deepened the sound, as though the bells were laughing. That night, the villagers in the valley below awoke to a storm. Lightning crowned the monastery towers, and 7 bells tolled together, not in harmony, but in chaos. Witnesses swore they saw shadows spill from the windows, figures draped in robes, but with faces blurred, mouths open in a single endless note. By dawn, the monastery was silent again, but no man dared approach. For from the valley, they could see the bells still swaying, though no wind stirred the peaks. Years passed. Travelers who sought the monastery rarely returned. Those who did spoke of corridors lined with statues. But when they looked closer, the statues wore monks' robes, and their eyes were wide with terror. The bells no longer rang for prayer. They rang for blood. Even now, shepherds in the Carpathians claim, when storms crawl across the mountains, they hear the tolling of 7 voices. Not iron on iron, but the hollow cry of men who were never buried. And so the legend of Saint Icarus endures. Not a monastery of prayer, but a cathedral of silence. They say if you stand beneath its ruined towers at midnight, and the bells toll for you, your voice will never be heard again. And so, our midnight tale comes to an end. But remember, the shadows never sleep, and another story always waits. If tonight's journey stirred your imagination, leave a comment, share your thoughts, and let the echoes of your voice join the legend. Do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel, so you never miss the next tale whispered in the dark. Until then, rest well, and beware the silence between the bells.